This presentation is about our practical experience in doing behavioral policy. And it's a practical experience that we had as the Open Evidence Research Group of the UOC, Università Oberta di Catalunya, together with Giuseppe and Franz is here. Franz Wolf works for us, and Francisco. So I'm telling some of the story that we had in working for the Commission on applying behavioral design to change policy. And in a way, Franz just gave me this book. It's a very interesting book. It's Neuroliberalism. And one answer to your question is that we live a contradiction where on the one hand, as Gerda showed, we are pushed to addiction to consumption, but on the other hand, all the responsibility is pushed on the individual to have an healthy lifestyle. So this is the contradiction. So, and you're right, on the one hand, the industry manipulates us to consume, but on the other, the regulator, instead of regulating and intervening, is pushing the responsibility for avoiding some big social problem on the individual. So that's a contradiction, and what this author called neuroliberalism. So, and this is some of the things I'm going to talk about now. Okay. So basically, this is the level of consciousness, and this is what is known to us and to the other, and this is the word that is unknown, and as in an iceberg, this is the largest percentage, but possibly is not unknown to the marketeers. So basically, the typical rational approach is to give more information to the customer. This is like a standard economic theory. More information, less information asymmetry, and people make the right choice. So industry provides some leaflet and basic information, and the policy toolkit, traditional toolkit, is to provide more information. Like, for instance, on privacy, and nobody read them. Oh, I've received, I don't know how many mail about GDPR, I didn't open any of it. So at a certain point, policymaker, after the book by Thaler and Sunstein, understood that maybe providing more information to consumers is not the most efficient way. And so that also policymakers should try to act on system one, as probably the marketeers are doing, eating the emotion with the brand and creating affordances. So basically, also as the question framed, the policymakers, they are trying to use the same approach, but to push us in the good direction. And then obviously there is a matter of who decides what is good for us or not. And again, this brings us back to ethical issues. So the basic idea of nudging is that it's easier to work on the restraining forces than to drive people to change. It's very difficult to change behavior by motivating people. It's easier to make them change inadvertently or removing some restraining force. And that's the basic idea of a nudge. Obviously, a nudge is not sufficient. Let's say a benign nudge is not sufficient to remove an addiction, especially if the addiction is created by, huge nudge like the one that Gerda talked about, and she also claimed that nudge is a euphemism for some of the industry practice. So basically, in the original definition, now you have, in this axis you have either it's an internality or an externality. So either it's better for you, or externality better for society. The intervention is system one or system two, and does it imply regulation or not? So originally the nudge in the definition of Thaler and Sunstein is positioned there because it's an internality, so it's to improve your health or your consumer welfare. It is not a regulation, so it's not embedded in laws or directives, and it should usually hit system one, so your automatic thinking, and not system two. So it should not require you to think a lot to make a decision. So this is let's say, the theory. And this is the practice. We have worked in several projects. These are only 4. We've done more. The first one, and you can see that it was not very useful because, for instance, I still smoke. We are the one who decided which picture goes on the tobacco cigarettes package. Okay, that was our intervention, and then it became part of a directive of the European Commission. So in a way, it's not a nudge because it's in this case had a regulatory implication. Then we tested the labels for CO2 on cars to see if some form of label might bring people to choose more eco-friendly. We did something on online gambling, and then eventually about kids online. Among the kids online, just to give you an example of what is this in-app purchase. Now, Google and Apple, after being fined by the Security Exchange Commission in the US, have reached an agreement with the Commission to make it more clear what in-app purchase means. But in 2012, if your kid came with your iPad or your iPhone saying, oh, I want to, this game is free. Can you put the password? You put the password. They start playing. But once they play, in these games, they can buy virtual power, they can personalize the character of the game. And I tell you by experience that in one day, my two sons, one was 12 and the other was 10, they spent 600 euro. Yes, buying powers, because again, you know, the monetization of virtual goods. Imagine, you know, children that do not understand even the value of money when they ask you the money. They didn't know. They bought all these powers to play and to go on without realizing. And I was lucky because it was only 600 euro, because then when this thing brought the SEC to intervene in the US, there were stories of parents who had spent $2,000, $3,000 in this way, because, you know, when you give the password now, they change, it lasts only 10 minutes, but when you put the password at the time, they could go on and play for the whole day and buy all this virtual power without realizing it, and so you would lose a lot of money. And basically, we have done an experiment with children in Barcelona and in the Netherlands, and France was involved in it, to try to see what happened. How can we make children aware that they are using money and maybe help them not do these choices. So these are the kind of things we have done. And now, look at this. At the beginning of the 20th century, the prevalence of smoking with women was very, very low. And then, you know, there was this kind of branding, you know. So smoking was associated gradually with being sophisticated, being autonomous, being, cool. And today there are even some cigarettes that are some package now that have been forbidden, but they put on the market package that were like cosmetics. The result is that prevalence is decreasing among men, not much, but it's decreasing, and it has increased among women, especially younger. Okay, so what will happen tomorrow with this? You know, these are the kind of picture we have tested. What kind of horrible so. This is a wrong place here. So what we did, just to give you the practice, what the Commission asked us and what we did. So we had, we did 3 experiments, one in a laboratory, all in the UK. We did an online experiment in 10 countries. And then we did a small experiment in Trento using eye tracking and skin conductance to test the effectiveness of this picture vis-a-vis simply the text. And we were given 84 of this picture, and we had to choose the 42 more effective in terms of emotional responses, willingness to pay, and also looking at the eye tracking, so the way they capture the attention, but also skin conductance, because the skin conductance is an indirect measure of your emotional reaction, because you basically capture the sweat on the skin which is linked to the sympathetic system, nervous system, which is an indication of an emotional arousal. So we did all of this, and basically our treatment was the picture with the text, and the placebo, so the control, was only the text, okay? And in the end, we ended up, we did a ranking of the picture. So in the end, we ended up, Paco is worried because I shouldn't be showing this picture. Nobody will tell, no? Well, then you erase this, because imagine, we did this study in 2012 and then 2014, and the report has not been published yet because there was a lot of conflict. But in any case, at the end of our study, we gave them a ranking, and at the end of on the basis of the ranking, there are 42 pictures that all member states have to put on the packages, and that can be rotated, okay? And it was a very tough project. It was supposed to last 3.5 months. It lasted basically 2 years because there were a lot of difficulties, let's say, using an euphemism, about the design, about many things. And it's this is a kind of nudge that is aimed at arousing affect. Affect is our aware understanding of our emotion, because the theory goes that once you are triggered emotionally, this can also activate your system too, so you can think. So from our result, we measured that this picture decreased willingness to pay, so people would be less willing to pay or to pay less money for this kind of packages, and the increased intention to quit, and also, the emotional reaction of people exposed to the picture was much higher than the people who just read the text. The second study that we have done was the online gambling, and basically we looked at the 5 biases that exist in the gambler's mind that the industry profits from, somehow as a repetition. Well, the gambler fallacy, if you have had 5 times, you expect the next one to come the opposite, but the fact is that the coin does not have a mind, so it doesn't consider that now, and the law of big number works only when there are big numbers. So when small numbers, it's possible that 10 times you will get red in the roulette instead of having then, what is the other color? Black, okay? So that's the typical gambler's fallacy. Then the near-miss fallacy, and what Gerda explained, the fact is that the near miss is programmed to occur more often than it would occur randomly. So this is a real manipulation of the random number generator. So researchers have proved that the near miss comes more often than it should occur, randomly. So you almost win, so you keep playing. Overconfidence, an illusion of control, that you're good with the numbers and you know the probability. And then we have hot and cold streaks, You think that sometimes when a basketball player starts getting the points, he has a hot hand, and then he gets a cold hand. And so in this case, I missed it 5 times. So I think I'm in a lucky streak, but the last 6th is the bullet. And this is also what gamblers report. They start winning, and so they keep going. In reality, it's only a matter of regressing to the mean. And then finally, there is entrapment, because in a way, it's a strange functioning of the loss aversion. It says you have lost a lot of money, and you cannot quit because you want to recover that. So you are entrapped, and you keep playing. So what we did, we tested several nudges, okay? For instance, this is a pictorial warning where we try to use the same technique as with the tobacco labeling, saying, gambling is addictive. Please call the number that can help you to quit. Then we put some of the treatment were asked by the commission, so they wanted to do the traditional things like putting the logo of the organization helping helping gambler, not nudgers. But to cut a long story short, the nudge that worked best were not those that were aimed at the individual, like the pictorial warming, etc., but they were those who stopped the human-machine interaction. So when we had this pop-up that said you lose or you win, or they had to change, or they had to stop because we had a self-defined limit of playing or not, every time this type of nudge were applied, we register behaviorally that people played less money on average and played more slowly. So our hypothesis there is that this, the hypothesis that it's not only the behavioral biases and heuristic at the individual level. There is this interaction between the individual level and the environment. The environment is created by the machine, which is designed to define some affordances, some way of acting. So if you don't break this interaction between the man and the machine, with other type of protective measure, you don't change the behavior. Whereas if you break this tunneling between the machine and the person, you can achieve some results. Why? Because in a way, it is as if you have, it's called a mental washout. In a sense, you just, for a moment, the person stop, all the emotional and cognitive load go away, and so he or she may be able to consider maybe, well, I bet less this time. This is somehow explained very simply, the hypothesis behind. And in the online kids, we did, I just skip because we have to leave sometimes for discussion. There were several problematic practices. Let's consider two. One is the in-app purchase, which I explained before, and the second one is advert game. So these are games that are free for kids to play online or on their mobile, but they carry a brand of a product. So let me just go to this because this is the more so in schools in the Netherlands and in Barcelona, we respected all ethical requirements, so we recruited children with the permission of the school, of the parents, and Franz Wolfgor was involved, and he was actually inspiring this experiment because he had already done it in the Netherlands. So we, in a way, replicated, but we tested some protective measure that the Commission want us to test. So basically, what we do, we have four groups of students. One group plays with an advert game, let's say, of a normal toy. A second group plays with an advert game of candies. The third group plays with an advert game of a toy with a protective measure that the Commission wanted to test. And the fourth group plays with an advert game of the candy with a protective measure. At the beginning and at the end, we gain some information about the kids, and we also about their body mass index. And what happened is that while they were playing, they could eat. We placed bowls of candies and other food, energy-dense food there, so they could eat. And the experimenter would control and wait how much was eaten. So the result was amazing. The kids exposed to the advert game of the candy ate more than the other in statistically very significant way. So it was clear that an advert game of junk food was working below the level of consciousness, and the kids, while playing, were eating more, because the other kids playing with an advert game of a toy would eat much less. And we did also focus group with parents and children, and a survey with parents. And when you ask the person in a survey about these things, no, the parents are not worried. No, my children are not influenced by advertising. No, they are worried about inappropriate content, violence, other important risks, but much lower than the ads. And the kids also said, oh, well, the advertising is boring, I don't look at it. Then, when you put them in practice in an experiment, you see that these advert games work very effectively. And the protective measure that we try to test, that was suggested by the Commission, like a warning, remember this is an ad, did not work. Why? Because just in general, we are always in a condition of cognitive scarcity because we have a lot of things to think about. When you are playing a game, a lot of cognitive bandwidth and emotional bandwidth is taken by the game. So you will not see any ad saying this is an advertisement, so be aware. Kids, we tested, we asked questions, nobody had recognized, or to very little extent, they recognized that it was an attempt to persuade them, okay? And the protective measure that they proposed were not effective. In the app purchase, we also tested different measures. We put a warning, we tested an activity that would stop the flows, but the results are less conclusive than the one in the advert game, because we had some results in Barcelona that were not totally confirmed in the Netherlands, so we cannot conclude. But in any case, we can say that as they grew older, they understood better that they were spending money, so that it's clear that many of the younger kids were totally unaware and defenseless in front of this technique. Now let's go to the conclusion, because this has to do with the question that we had. For instance, at the end of the study, the Commission tried to extract from us the recommendation. But however, as a researcher, we always have to say that we work under the condition of epistemic uncertainty, and in the end, it's a matter of taking a political decision. In this respect, Gerda is right that we cannot afford the luxury of ethical discussion, because there are no neutral choice. There will always be an ethical implication, depending on who makes the choice. The issue is that at a certain point, those who have the power to decide policy must make a political decision. And this political decision will affect different interests in different ways. There is no way to find a win-win solution. And the issue is that in this case, sometimes command and control, so real regulation, hard regulation like in the good old times, is the only effective way, because we tested different type of protective measure, but it's difficult. How can you stop this issue? It's very difficult to design, counter-nudge people with some measure, because the flow, the interaction with this game is so strong that it's an illusion that you can stop or change the behavior simply through a nudge. So in certain cases, I mean, we have an epidemic of obesity and diabetes among children. The only possibility is to ban, and in Scandinavian countries, advert games are banned of food. Because if you consider in television, from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock in the afternoon, you cannot have advertising of energy-dense food. So in this is a case in which, because the online world is so cool, it comes from Silicon Valley, blah, 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 they have a privileged situation. They are not regulated as much as the television is regulated. So in my view, maybe you can think I'm an old Soviet nostalgic. In this case, simply you have to introduce, Giuseppe says it's true, you have to introduce a command, a regulation, a traditional regulation. Because, for instance, this table that was developed by Giuseppe, we tested different type of protective measure, and we had different results in terms of effectiveness. So the easy to implement is not effective. More information, even in the form of a label, in the end is not a real nudge, it doesn't work. However, those effective nudges, like those that stop the human-machine interaction, are very difficult to implement because games are so different, and you have to find one technical solution standardized across different players, and the industry will have an easy way to say, well, but our game is like this. So in a way, when you do this work like us, trying to bring evidence into policy, you face two problems. The regulator, the policymaker, wants to simplify and uncertainty. Remove uncertainty. This is the solution, and this solution is given by the scholar. I'm not taking political responsibility. On the opposite end, industry is very good in disseminating doubts. They raise doubts, you know. There is a nice book called The Merchant of Doubts. They're not saying, for instance, that smoke is not bad. They say, well, but maybe there are other causes. So when you do this work, you face this to increase manipulation to increase uncertainty where there is not, or from the side of the regulator, attempt to remove uncertainty when uncertainty is there. So when at the end of our study they ask us to cut in stone one solution, what we can say is that, you know, the evidence is good, but you have to replicate, and you know, it's not enough to have one experiment to decide a policy. In the end, the policy you have to decide based on political will and your political choice. This is why, again, I repeat, and in a way, the debate about it, whether it's ethical or not, bring us in the wrong direction. It's a matter of behavioral science are good, behavioral design is important, it can change the choice architecture, but at the end of the day, there are also political decisions, and we cannot just give solutions that are, as Francesco called, the magic bullet. There is no magic bullet from science. Which brings me to the last element, which is a lot of some marketing. This is a book that we just published in Italy with Giuseppe and Francesco Bogliacino, that was also part of our consortium. And I hope that we can publish soon also in Spanish. And it's called Scienza in Vendita, the science on sale. And we talk about the relationship between evidence, economic interest, and value. And we claim that any policy, any decision cannot be entirely determined by evidence, but it's the interaction between, obviously, the evidence at hand, the economic interest that plays into the issue, and the values of the people. And so any decision is the result of this interaction. So we continue to do behavioral science, big data analysis, and we will continue to, because, for instance, our research group, Open Evidence, is a translational research that is applied. We want to apply our research skill. We don't want to remain in the ivory tower, but we're also very aware of the limit of science, and that in the end, policy depends on not only on evidence, but also on the economic interest at hand, and on the value of the citizen, but also of the policymaker. So that was all I had to do and to tell you.